Hello everyone, my name is Alvin, and this is my YouTube channel about my musical endeavors as a media composer and creator. One of the big reasons I wanted to start this channel was to put myself out there and see if I can meet and collaborate with as many composers, filmmakers, and creators out there. And this week I had the pleasure of meeting and catching up with Calgary, Alberta-based composer Kevin Wan. Kevin has a bachelor's degree in music theory and composition and a master's in scoring for film, television, and video games from the Berklee College of Music, where he attended in Valencia, Spain. He has composed a few short films and was a composer assistant for the AMC series Into the Badlands. I don't know about you, but I actually watched that show and it was great. These days, Kevin's primary focus is actually on composing music within the video games industry. And he's got several game title credits. His most recent major release was just a couple of months ago in January 2021, where he composed, conducted, and recorded a Japanese RPG game score, Himeko Sutori, and this was all done at Air Studios. Yes, the Air Lyndhurst Studios, where the top grossing film and game scores and the all-famous Spitfire audio orchestral sample libraries are recorded. I was thoroughly impressed by his work upon first introduction to his music and the video that you might have seen a quick clip of at the beginning of this video. His Himeko Sutori symphonic orchestral score seemed like a perfect blend between the sounds of Studio Ghibli's Joe Hisaishi, but with a rich orchestration and arrangement flair of a John Williams. Here's a short clip of the live recording of Kevin conducting his own score at Air Studios. From my brief time chatting and knowing Kevin, it is clear that he has an immense attention to detail with his work and always open to connect and offer help. Without further ado, here is the Creative Conversations call from our Webex session. Hey Kevin, nice to meet you. Yeah, I guess we found each other on VI Control, or that list of all the who's on YouTube for composers.
Nice to meet you too. Yeah.
Yeah, nice to meet you. So yeah, when you read my bio, I guess you realized that I was originally from Malaysia, and I'm Canadian, and you're Canadian as well. You're in a different province. I'm in BC. You're in Alberta. So that's pretty awesome. So maybe we can start with were you born in Canada?
Yeah, so I was actually born in Fort McMurray. Both my parents work in the oil and gas industry, so they moved up there. They actually met in Calgary. They moved from Malaysia in maybe the 80s, and then they moved to Fort McMurray for work. And then I was born, my sister was born, and then we moved back to Calgary actually when I was around high school. And then that's kind of when I started getting more interested in music actually. So it was actually a good opportunity to move to the city, just because more exposure to music, more exposure to other people, and yeah.
Oh man, that is so cool. So your parents just met here. So yeah, that's a little different from mine. We all packed up and moved when I was 9 here. So
wow.
Yeah, but yeah, that's so cool. And I was looking through at some of your background, and what really blew me away was your what do you call it, the the recording that you did at Air Studio.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
the orchestration. I mean, like, just being there, it is already awesome. Like, kudos. And the music as well was just beautiful with the
Thank you.
Orchestration. And you can really tell, like I could tell when I was watching the video, especially of that cellist, when when he looked over at the other cellist.
Yeah, I know exactly that moment. Yeah. This is a good solo.
Yeah, he's like,
this is a good moment.
I'm liking this. He's not doing like ostinatos, like something crazy, like, oh, another one of these composers.
Yeah, they're probably like, yes, we finally got the melody.
Yeah, he's like, yeah, I'm feeling this. I'm enjoying it. So, but anyway, I thought it was so cool.
It was an incredible experience. I studied my master's at Berklee College of Music in Valencia, Spain. And one of their kind of final projects was a recording, a studio recording with Air Studios. So we've been doing recordings remotely through Budapest. We've been doing small chamber recordings too, like a string quartet or like a brass quintet with the local players from the school. And that was kind of like our final culminating recording, right? So we had about maybe 2 or 3 weeks to write it, right? So it was up to us maybe 25 of us students. It was up to us to find our own project, or maybe find like a script, something that we wanted to write to. And I really love video games, so I was like, okay, I think I'm gonna try and find a video game to write for, and luckily I was able to find this game, Himeko Sutori. So and I reached out to the developer. I was like, hey, I have this like really great opportunity to record an orchestra, and I really think my sound would lend well to your game. So I was like, do you mind if I would write for you, and then maybe we could see where this goes. Maybe I could write a little bit more of the soundtrack, or we'll see where it goes. And he was like, yeah, sure. Like he was blown away. Someone was actually contacting him to compose music for him, right? But it was an incredible experience.
Oh yeah, and did there's so much there I want to unpack and ask you about. But did the video, did that come with the kind of like the package? Is that something that they do for anyone who goes there and books a session, or like how?
So from my experience,
professionally done, yeah. From my experience,
because it was kind of like a school project, it was the professors, they basically left it up to us. They're like, if you want to record it, like get some of your colleagues. When it's not your turn, get some cameras. We can get cameras for you guys, but we'll basically do the whole recording of the video, different angles. You guys can decide where you want to record. And I think it's kind of like that with other recording orchestras too. They don't really do the video side of things, but if you want to bring in your own video crew, or you want to just bring in one guy to record a few angles, right?
They're totally cool with that. So, oh, awesome. So you just had one of your classmates there and just help out?
Yeah, and even I took turns like recording some shots. Like we would basically go to one of our colleagues, and if he had like a French horn solo, we would kind of go in on that and kind of pan around. We learned a lot of videography kind of stuff, some basic videography.
It looked great. It looked
each for the recording part, each student had about 15 minutes to record about 3 minutes. And these players were incredible sight readers. They were monster sight readers. They were reading everything for the first time. So there are so many of these intense passages or hard kind of solo passages that they were just blowing off like no problem.
Oh wow! So the process is literally, is it just the day of you show up and they got a bunch of prints of what's
exactly. So we've organized all of our sheet music based on parts, and we place them on every stand in order, and they're just reading it boom 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 boom.
Holy smokes, that is some
and if you think about it mathematically, right, if you have a 3-minute piece, you only have 15 minutes to record. You basically only have maybe 2, 3, 4 maximum passes, right? So if you hear something that isn't quite what you want the first or second time, you really need to be able to communicate to the players, oh, I think it should be a little more like this, or a little more staccato here, or something like that, right? But it is kind of nerve-wracking to be like, oh no, I only have like 2 or 3 recordings of this, but they did an incredible job for sure.
And the thing that blew me away too was you were conducting your own score too, so that's
Yeah,
I mean,
so
that's another skill in itself, like
part of the school, the class, there was a conducting class to kind of prep us, because obviously it's very scary to just stand up there and start doing it.
Yeah, and these are like
I wouldn't have done it
pros.
if I didn't get those classes, right?
Okay.
But it was the school itself was a great program. I learned a lot, having been classically trained. The technology part was really lacking for me. And that's really what Berklee Valencia, they kind of filled in that gap for me. So I'm really grateful looking back on it. And the music turned out great. The players were phenomenal. It was funny, right after our session, I believe they were doing, Alan Menken was doing, was it Beauty and the Beast?
Okay, that was around that time.
It was around that time, 2015. But it was like, apparently it was like the next day or something, and they were just like tearing down the session and then putting up, getting ready for that session. And we're like, wow, it's so cool. We're like in the space of like greats, you know, like,
oh yeah,
all the great films, all the great video games, they're coming out of here. And just to get a taste of that really wants, like, it really motivates me to go back there one day with my own music, with a whole soundtrack, for example, right?
Yeah. No, I could totally see it. I mean, like that short clip, that piece that you did for that video game, that sounded incredible. It sounded like right up there with kind of a mashup between a Williams and Hisaishi type of score. I think is that what you were kind of going for?
Yeah, that's kind of like Hisaishi is one of my biggest influence. Like I love Studio Ghibli movies growing up.
Right.
I loved like Final Fantasy. That was another big influence of mine, video game wise. So I really drew a lot of kind of influences from there into my own music. Just because I guess I was different from a lot of my colleagues in that I kind of was a game music composer first, whereas most of them came from a film scoring kind of route. You know what I mean?
Right.
So it's pretty interesting there. Just because I think game music isn't really known as like the orchestral cinematic music that maybe films are well known for, right? But it's definitely getting, I'd say it's getting more popular, right?
Yeah, some of those massive games, I mean, they make as much money or even more than most films. So you get right up in there. Yeah, but I guess we'll talk about the differences between game and film and TV, because you have deep experiences in there. But maybe before we jump into that, I just want to dig in a little bit with your classical background, and actually just how did you get started in just music? Looks like you had a good time at Berklee, but before that, like, what was it like growing up?
So similarly to you, I was watching your last video, and you said you actually started piano and organ, stuff like that. A typical Asian kid growing up in Canada, you take piano lessons, right? For better or for worse. Some kids drop out, some kids keep going. But for me, I just kept going. And it was just kind of part of my childhood growing up, right? And I can't say it was something I loved from the beginning. It was just kind of something I did as a hobby, right? Or just kind of learn a skill. And then it got to a point where I was in high school. It was my final year of high school, and we kind of had to decide what major, right? Oh, sorry.
Yep.
So we just had to decide what major we wanted to go into, and I kind of didn't want to go the 9-to-5 route. I wasn't keen on like going into engineering or business. And piano was kind of a skill I already had acquired, right? So I thought, why not, like, let's keep going with this. Let's see where it goes. If not, I can always go back and do business or engineering or do medicine or whatever I want, right? Just because with the music, it's almost like you're an athlete, right? Because when you're practicing, if you stop practicing for a few years, it takes a lot of time to get back to what the level you had, right? So that was kind of a main motivation, I guess, for me taking music.
Right.
Not because I loved it, but maybe it was an opportunity to do something that I maybe could enjoy in the future, right?
Oh, okay.
So I got into music in Ontario, Western Ontario. It was in London, Ontario. So I studied music theory and composition there. And I first started out as a pianist, but I eventually switched over to composition because I kind of had this interest in video games and music. So I hadn't written anything until university, but I had this interest when I started university of, I think I want to try this composing thing. It kind of sounds cool because I grew up loving like Mario soundtracks. I would try and like notate all the Mario 64 kind of things on bass and piano. I was just kind of figuring it out, right?
Yeah.
Classic, just like curiosity. I went there and I found that in the classical program, the music is it depends on the faculty, of course, but it's very kind of like avant-garde, modern type of classical music. I'm sure you know what that kind of area is. It's kind of 20th century, 21st century music, where there's a lot of aleatoric stuff and sometimes that doesn't sound very nice, in my opinion.
Oh yeah.
And it just got me thinking. I was like, oh man, I really don't want to do this. Like this isn't what I want to do. I want to try and write music for games or films or TV, right? Just because it's a little more practical, and I think I should be writing something that I enjoy, right?
Yeah, that's important. It's all about emotion and communication, right? So yeah.
And as I was learning at the university, I found that I was getting always pushback from things that I was writing, whether it was kind of weirder or just like more melodic. And I was like, you know what? Like no matter what I write, somebody's not gonna like it, right? So I'm just gonna write what I like and go from there. So that started me down the path of video game music, really, because I really like listening to video game music. And I was like, oh, I really want to try to emulate these kind of melodies and like songs and composers, right? And that basically took me into the Berklee kind of path there. It wasn't an easy path. Like I took some video game music classes online by myself, just because I felt kind of lost, right? Growing up in a classical space, video game music's kind of shamed upon, even film music to an extent.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, so it was basically I was on my own. I had to go online, try and find knowledge, found some courses, found some classes, eventually found Berklee Valencia. I actually took a year off. I took a piano diploma at the university after I finished my degree, and I basically took that time to also build up my portfolio. So I reached out to some friends. I had one friend who actually worked or was studying at Sheridan College. It's an art and design college. He was doing like a short film, like an animated short. So I actually reached out to him, and I was able to write music for him and used it as some portfolio material. So I was proactive in that way, that I looked for opportunities to build a portfolio so I could send to the Berklee College of Music, and eventually I got in, right? So yeah, it's quite a journey. That's my quick history, I guess.
Oh, that is super fascinating. I love that you mentioned that you're just going to go for what you feel you enjoy, and that's like the sign of a true artist. Like you're not going to care what other people think. You're just going to do what you feel like you you want to express. So that is great, and it sounds like you got a pretty awesome strategy of what you did there with the portfolio and reaching out to other creators in a different media and kind of merge the two
Yeah,
together.
I was like, I
benefits
can't.
everyone. Yeah.
I was like, I can't be the only one who doesn't think this music sounds good, right? Like in the classical, like kind of setting, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. So,
it's
so you did at the in Ontario, you finished that, and then you did a master's at Berklee. And so was that pretty much all remote, right, with Berklee, or you didn't
That was
actually?
actually on campus. So
Oh, it was.
Berkeley
Okay.
has a master's campus, actually. Not located in Boston where their undergrad is, but it was in Spain. So I actually
Wow.
went to Spain for 1 year
Yeah.
and studied composing for film, TV, and video games. And
Wow.
that's that was the program. It started, I think, in 2012,
Yeah.
and my year was 2015. So it was still a very new program, but kind of the defining feature of it was that last recording session at Air Studios. They kind of used it as a this is a big, like a great step forward for you, like a very nice portfolio material, great
Hmm.
opportunity, once in a lifetime kind of experience, right? And
Yeah.
and it really was at the end of the day. It was a
Yeah.
great year, and it was very intense. The class.
Awesome. So that's a bonus as well. Living in Spain, that must have been quite the adventure of.
It was
So,
interesting.
yeah.
I really I know what it's like to come to Canada, for example, as an immigrant, right? That's how I
Right.
felt going there. I didn't have any Spanish like not language background, right?
Hmm.
Because I was studying music, I had to make a decision. Oh, should I like study Spanish or should I study music, right? So I was like, oh, I'll study music there and see what I can do with the Spanish to get around, you know?
Yeah.
Um, and there were classmates from Spain, from Italy, from like US who had like Spanish knowledge that would help around, right?
Yeah.
All the classes were in English, but yeah, I'm amazed with how much Spanish I learned in the 1 year. I forgot most of it now, but
Oh, that's
um,
awesome. Yeah. So is it pretty international, like the all the students that enroll
yeah,
there?
there are
Or
students from Canada, from the US, from Europe, Asia. There are a few students from China.
Mhm.
Um, there was one student from Malta, even. There's everywhere in the world, really.
Oh, man,
um,
that's awesome.
yeah.
Very cool. So yeah, and then you got into, well, you mentioned you love video games quite a bit, and you've been doing some covers and all that kind of stuff. So maybe you can help us out, and what's your perspective on getting into the video game industry versus film and TV? It sounds like you have a lot of
Yeah,
hearts
yeah.
in the film and
I
TV
guess I'll
side.
turn it. I guess I'll turn it around to you also. But what do you know about video games and kind of video game music? Just so we can kind of start the conversation, I guess.
Sh-
Just so I'm
Um,
not talking all the time either.
Actually, I know pretty much nothing of how you get into the video game industry and what that looks like. The only thing I kind of have seen is it Nuendo is some of
Hmm.
the tools that you use,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
with video games, it's a lot of it is finding ways to I guess repeat certain themes or phrases and stuff like that, motives, but in a way that's not going to bore your audience to tears or the gamers, because everything's all you might repeat a whole section over and over again, kind of stuff like that. So it has to be very circular. But other than that, as far as the industry and how that happens, is it a lot of in-house? I guess big production companies have a lot of in-house composers. They wouldn't kind of on a per
Yeah, like
game basis. Yeah.
bigger
Anyway, I'm all over the
companies
place,
have,
so
yeah,
don't.
bigger companies like have their own in-house composers and sound designers and audio designers, but most of it is freelance, like contract work. In terms of like the differences between video game music and like say film or TV, the biggest difference is like the linear aspect of TV and film
Right.
versus the non-linear. There are still linear aspects in video game music, like cutscenes and like cinematics.
Hmm.
But in terms of like gameplay music, if you are like traveling in like a desert world or something, you could be in there for 1 minute or 2 hours, right?
Yeah.
And the music kind of has to not get boring in that sense. So the biggest characteristic I'd say for video game music is that it loops. So basically the last few bars, you kind of have to tie it back to the beginning without the player noticing or you noticing, right? And you can do that through like harmonically or just even kind of like fade it out slowly and then kind of bring it back up. And you can do that in your DAW too, right? So you can just kind of figure out where the loop point is, kind of cut it off, drag the tail, kind of the reverb tail, bring it over to the beginning of the track. And then when you export the track out, it'll end with an abrupt cut. But when the game developer puts that in the game, it'll loop perfectly over, right? And even if you take a copy of that track, right? Yeah, even if you take that track and then copy it over side by side, it'll loop and you won't even hear any like hiccups or pops or clicks, right?
Yeah. Are there certain lengths that it's very typical of what people go for? It all just kind of depends on...
really depends. It could be like short stingers from like 15-20 seconds, or just like full out tracks from 2 to 3 minutes to even like 8 minutes, right? Yeah. Really, it is truly flexible. And I guess the only thing is it's just not determined by picture, whereas like you can have more flexibility in that sense, where it's not you're tied to the picture, but you can kind of create this. I like to create like cinematic works with just like my imagination, right? You can kind of think of it as more like concert music in a way, where it's kind of more free flowing, as opposed to some, especially TV, I find you really have to be very obvious with your hits. Just because from my perspective, TV is kind of, they really like to emphasize things, right? It needs to be very clear where the cuts are, because a lot of people aren't watching TV. Sometimes they're just watching it in the background, right? I actually assisted a TV composer a little bit, and he was very clear in just saying like, oh, this happens here, this happens here, this happens here. I need to be very obvious in my changes, because the audience won't stay
pick up on the
exactly
cues
right
of what the storytelling is trying to go for. Yeah. Okay. So
have you,
as far as tool wise, you're still using Cubase? It sounded like whenever we were chatting before this.
I actually use Studio One, Studio One 5.
No.
Yeah.
Okay.
Not a lot of people do. I'd say it's not the best for film scoring, but for what I'm doing for video games, it has like basic video function, and at the end of the day, all the DAWs are really good now. Right. And it really is a matter of preference. I like Studio One just for the workflow, and it's kind of I call it a second generation DAW, where it's like Cubase, Pro Tools, Logic. They're kind of in the first generation, and they kind of have those weird
all that baggage
sometimes
from years of that code rolling over. Yeah,
exactly. So a few years ago, I made the decision to flip over, and I've been really happy with it.
Really? Okay. Yeah, I think was it Dirk is really Dirk Ehlert?
Yeah, I have watched some of his videos. Yeah.
I guess YouTuber out there that you see him compose quite often in that. As far as so specifically for video games, like I mentioned Nuendo, maybe I have no idea why someone might use that versus your other DAWs. Is there something to do with how it triggers?
Yeah, to be honest, I actually don't have that much information on Nuendo, but I do know I think it might have some triggers like you said, more adaptive audio features, also kind of like mastering when you're adding in sound effects and all that kind of stuff with the music. From what I know, I think people use it more for like mixing and mastering game music audio as opposed to composing. But I think is it Steinberg?
It's Steinberg as well. Yeah.
I think because it what's the word I'm looking for? It talks well with Cubase. It syncs well. I think that's why a lot of people like to use those two softwares in tandem together.
Yeah, I guess it's closer to integrations with some of the developer tools. Maybe if you're coding as well at the same time, and you're trying to see what the triggers of the different sounds and everything. Actually, speaking of which, I guess in video games you have a lot of working with sound designers for different effects and things like that. How's that relationship, or is it typically the composer, you also help out with coming up with some of those elements?
It's really up to the composer. I personally leave the sound design to someone else. I'll usually contract out someone else, or the last game I did, the game developer, he actually just did it himself, probably using like royalty-free sounds or just looking around and kind of chopping things together, right? But for me, I don't like to, I like to kind of focus on just the composing, and it's really just a preference, right? But some people really do like to get into the audio design world, and it really is its own world, separate from music. So that's why for me, I like to focus on crafting my music better, instead of kind of focusing on the audio design, just because it's so overwhelming once you get into it, right?
Yeah, that's like a whole rabbit hole, whole world, like you said.
Yeah, exactly.
Sound design. Yeah.
And it really depends on the person, because in a way it does make you more employable, I guess, if you can do composing, if you can do the audio implementation, if you can do the sound design, as opposed to just the music, right? But again, it's really a preference what you kind of want to do with your career, right?
Yeah, that makes sense, that you can add on more value to the developers, that hey, I can do everything. But yeah, so I guess advice you might have for composers coming up who want to get into the video game world, like if you wanted to start all over again, would you have done exactly the same things, or is there some tweaks here and there of how you?
That's a good question. I think if I had some advice, I'll start with that. I'm not sure about if I could do it over, what I would do, but if I had some advice, I would say building an online profile is almost incredibly important, especially nowadays with all the COVID going on in the world. It only made the amount of composers online just grow, right? In the film world and video game world, it's just like the most oversaturated kind of position, the music, right? And at the end of the day, there's only one musician to each project, right?
Yeah.
That's the tough part. That's why having an online profile, I think, whether it's putting your tracks on Spotify, Apple Music, having a Twitter, having an Instagram, right? Putting YouTube like yourself, having that online profile, it's like, I usually tell people, it's like building friends, like relationships.
Yeah.
If you have a social network in your workplace or outside of work, just think of that, but online, right?
Yeah.
You need time to build relationships with like-minded people, and those are the people that'll help you get gigs or collaborations, or even work in the future, right? I actually connected with a developer maybe 5 years ago, and he was doing a really cool side-scrolling 2D game, and I was like, oh, do you need music for this? He's like, oh no, I actually don't, but I really like your stuff, so I'll actually, if you don't mind, I might contact you later when I'm working on the next one, right? And I totally forgot about this guy, but 2-3 years later, he actually emailed me out of the blue. He said, hey, I'm working on this and I actually need some music. Do you want to help out? And I was like, yeah, sure, of course.
You never know. Yeah, you just plant that seed, and
that's something I just reached out because I actually liked the previous game, and 2-3 years later, I wasn't even expecting it, right? So just kind of letting people know that that's what you're doing, and just being a good person, right? Like it's the same with the real world. If you're a good person, the karma will always come back to you, right? And you can always create your own good luck, right?
Yeah.
It takes luck, of course, to make it in this industry, but I really do think you can make your own luck with good decision making, right? And things like making an online profile, right?
Just improving your odds. And yeah, especially in this kind of world where everything unfortunately has to be all online, it's so important to just show people who you are, all the good, all the bad, and this is how I work. And if you like it, then reach out and let's do something. If not, then all's fair. But I think if you're not somewhere digitally, you kind of don't exist because everyone's so busy with their own.
Yeah, because I know just
project.
just from watching your YouTube channel, like I love the content, by the way, and
well, thank you.
It's kind of a way for you to reach out to people and kind of grow your online profile in a way, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just enjoying even just the process of just making YouTube videos and stuff like that, like being on the filmmaker side,
right?
Editing and then just, but the huge one that makes me really happy is talking to people like you and Josh, and I hope a lot more other guests in the future, and just anyone who's just DMing me and just chatting and just being part of the community is so exciting. I think that's I'm reaching that goal. I don't need like the bajillion subscribers or all those things, but I'm just looking for that connection, with others who have the same kind of passions. And so yeah, I think that's something that I highly recommend anyone in not just this industry, but a lot of the other creative realms as well, even in engineering, which is my kind of main day job. It's so important to have that good reputation and easy to work with, like you said, and and then the rest it's just your work speaks for itself as well.
What's been the most what's been the most gratifying moment so far since you've started like your YouTube channel, and I guess in terms of maybe getting feedback or just connecting with people, or even like just being part of the community, like you said?
Yeah, I mean, like it all, just getting that comment like, hey, I'm just about to do this thing and your video really helped me out, like perfect timing, like thanks for the info. Or like great comparison, I've been like looking at this for a while and your video helped me make the decision. Like it's just gratifying that I'm putting all this effort into certain videos and stuff like that, anticipating that someone might benefit from it, and when you get that feedback that it is and you've improved someone's life, like in some little way or maybe a big way, I don't know, then it's very satisfying. And yeah, if anyone's watching like this and they're looking up to filmmakers or composers that are in the industry already and wanted to get into it, it's, I think, super valuable to get that out there and lend a helping hand. So it's awesome that you're on here. And I'm so glad that to be able to chat with you and
thank you.
Find another, like I said, brother from another mother in Canada here.
Yeah, it's a small world. There aren't too many Malaysians that come to Canada, right? So
yeah, I think it's a lot of my other relatives all went to Australia and New Zealand, a bit closer, I guess.
Yeah,
than going to the Americas there.
Right.
Yeah. So you just built a huge rig. You said you went with a Ryzen.
I did. So I have a kind of unique setup. I have a PC secondary machine, and I'm using a MacBook Pro as my primary machine. It's a 16-inch MacBook Pro with 64 RAM. And then my slave computer has about 96 gigabytes of RAM, and I just upgraded to a Ryzen 9. How I kind of work is I kind of have everything on VE Pro, just in a template. So I have all my woodwinds, my brass, my strings, my percussion, all ready to go. And then any other instruments that I might need, I'll pull for a specific project. But basically, I'll have everything loaded into RAM, so I don't need to go loading everything from Contact. If I know I'm going to write an orchestral piece, I'm not going to pull up all my strings, all my woodwinds, all my brass, it's going to take about 10-15 minutes just to set it up, right? And bus everything according to how I want it. So that's kind of why, that's kind of why I have the template set up. And I know a lot of people sometimes don't like the template. It hinders creativity, stuff like that. On the flip side, if you do have a consistent type of sound, it's really saves time at the end of the day, right? So it's really up to the person, but from what we were talking about, you kind of go more towards the load the instruments and just kind of write based on inspiration kind of thing, right?
I've kind of gone back and forth, and I think there's some others that are kind of doing that too, especially as computing power and SSDs and stuff like that get better. So I do a blend. Sometimes, I'll have like my orchestral template, nowhere near your, I think you had like 200 or 300.
It's getting up
like
there.
tracks or something like that. Like, holy smokes. I mean, I'll have some that I'll load all the Albions, or I'll load all the Abbey Road stuff, or like a mixture with CSS and stuff like that. But I appreciate both perspectives. Like, there are times when you just have an idea, it's like, oh, I need this instrument right now, like, and it's nice that it's already loaded there. You just scroll down and just like start going. But sometimes I also just like that, starting like a fresh like from scratch, and then I'm just gonna like cherry pick and force myself to go through my contact libraries, like, oh man, I haven't looked at this in a long time, like, let's see what's this about. But that's more like experimental. I think I agree with the like, if you have a project that you have some timelines on, all that kind of stuff, or if you have like a series of things that you're going to do very similar sound, like you said, then it makes sense to keep that template for that whole duration and not have to fart around and recreate like what your reverb was and all the compressors and effects and balancing.
I've been playing around with like my reverb and my kind of bussing, just because I kind of want a drier sound. Some of the libraries I were using were a bit wet, so I kind of switched the mic positions a little bit just to get a bit of a drier sound, so I have a bit more control over the reverb, just to give flexibility, right? And I just switched over a bunch of like sounds and stuff. So I'm really liking this new kind of way of working, but we'll have to see, I guess. All right.
Yeah. Maybe you can give us a tour one day of your whole rig looks like that you're setting it up. It sounds pretty epic.
It's sometimes I can spend more time on the template than actually writing, and I'm like, oh man, this is
that's the thing that is so dangerous, right? You could get into like this endless, I guess, yak shit.
Literally a rabbit hole, and you're just like,
and then you're like, wait a minute, what was I supposed to be doing?
And then you're like, oh great, I didn't write anything today.
You get lost in all the tech. Actually, you were in I mean, literally recording where Spitfire does a lot of some of their recordings. How does it compare when you use some of these sample libraries that they're coming out with that's recorded in that space, and you actually having been there and you had the full orchestra there?
So I do like the Spitfire stuff. I have their brass, the symphonic brass, and the strings, just because I do love that sound. Maybe I'm biased just because I recorded there, but I do love that sound that it has, the air sound, the Air Studio sound that you can't really get anywhere else, right? Also the Spitfire solo cello is actually that soloist that was looking over at the other guy. It's actually him. So I actually picked up that library too, and I love that library a lot. Yeah.
Okay, I'll gotta find. Do you know his name? Maybe I'll put it in the description. And
his name's Richard Harwood, and you can just look up Spitfire solo cello. His name is on the library, and you can can look him up. I believe also the bassist in my video, the lead bass player. He also has in the Spitfire solo, the bass version. He did that library too. So.
Wow, that is
so
awesome.
It's cool. So if you want it to sound, if you want your solo cellos to sound like that, go grab that library.
That's cool. So it matches pretty well, like from what
I think so. And it has that kind of space that other libraries don't really have. in terms of like some libraries sound a bit too close, or even when they have the reverb, it sounds a little like artificial. But that one, it's from that space, so I just really like. I don't know what it is that they do to it, but
yeah, the magic sauce. So do you mix different spaces or different libraries quite a bit in some of your work, or that's something you kind of depends?
In terms of like the libraries, like within a family, I guess.
Yeah, for example, I don't know, do you mix like some Cinesample stuff with Spitfire, or stuff in Maida Vale, maybe with the BBCSO?
Yeah. So for example, like let me just take a look here. I use like cinematic strings, like the old one, not the new studio strings.
Right.
And that's kind of the reason for the drier sound, just so I can mix those libraries together and then put the one overarching reverb over everything, right? So you get things sounding similar but not too similar within each kind of family, and then you can put on your reverb on specific patches, right? I actually have it split up between long and short, because I find that the short patches actually have a lot more reverb. Even though you've given the same amount of reverb, it sounds like it has more reverb, right? So I actually dial that one back just so it's not too muddy when I'm going through like short passages, because sometimes the reverb will just make everything sound like a cloud, right?
Yeah,
like,
one big
boom,
soupy mess.
yeah. So that's kind of the reason I went to a template like that, like a drier template. It just gives me more control, right?
I see. Yeah, like it's a good starting point where you normalize them all on the equal footing, and then you do what you need on top. That sounds it's pretty good way about it. I guess in the video world, it's like going Rec 709 first, and then as a baseline, and then you do your color grading on top of that after. But anyway, so okay, cool. So I guess maybe I shouldn't eat up so much of your time. This is really cool that we got to hook up here, and we're recording this, so it's going to go on YouTube world, I guess. And maybe we'll, I don't know, do something else in the future, or bring you back, and we can go dive further into other aspects.
This is actually my first time on video. I've done piano covers on YouTube, but I'm showing my face, but I'm not really talking. And even when I'm writing my music, I'm just posting my music on there. So when you reached out to me to do this kind of interview conversation, I was kind of like, oh man, I've always been thinking about doing this, but I think you really helped me just like take that leap forward, right? Because it's daunting, right, to just go and start talking online.
Like I won't even tell you how many times I've just recorded myself before actually uploading my first talking head video. It's like, oh, I can't stand looking at myself, or I sound horrible. You like edit this and all that, and then finally it's like, you know what, just go for it. And this is awesome. I think this is really good content. Thanks.
Anyways, back to where I was going. I'd love to be back on, like whether we do like any short series or something. I know with the last speaker you were having, Josh, you were talking about like maybe a podcast or something, even just like a mini series where you just talk about a specific concept, or just like talk about a library, or even
I'll call you up
something
and
like that,
harass you. Is this gonna work for a game? Like, what do you think? That'll be really cool. So I hope to see more stuff coming up from you. Is there where can people find you?
You can find me on my website, www.kevinwanmusic.com. I also am pretty active on Twitter. It's pretty good for even the game and film industry, just for reaching out to people, building relationships online. Flame Stalker is my handle, Flame Stalker, 2 words.
Okay.
Or you can see me on Spotify, Apple Music, or even just like reach out to me. I'm also on YouTube. You'll want to check out Resinaga. We didn't get to talk about it today, but I do piano covers of video game music. Resinaga, Resonaga. You can probably link it in the description below.
Very cool.
And yeah.
Awesome. Well, look forward to chatting more with you and seeing what else you start putting out here.
Awesome. And I can't wait to see what you're doing too. And we'll keep making music, keep making videos, and there you go.
Hey there, thanks again for joining us in this episode here as we met with composer Kevin Wan. I'm excited to see what he does next and look forward to more collaborations. If you want to catch up with Kevin, you can find him at kevinwanmusic.com or catch him on his YouTube or Twitter account. I'll put some links in the description below if you want to check him out. Well, that'll do it for this episode, folks. I'm excited for more guests in the future here on the channel where we'll share some of the journeys and experiences we have as creatives. If you have any ideas of guests or you would like to come on yourself, please feel free to contact me at my site, leave a message in the comments below or DM me on Instagram. As always, if you would like to see more content like this, please hit the bell button, subscribe, and add a comment. Love to hear from you. Until next time, keep creating and have a great week, and I'll see you in the next video.